So first of all, a warm welcome from my side to the session Governments Pay Your Water Bills. My name is Fanny Zentai and I'm working in GIZ's sectoral program Water Policy as a good water governance advisor. Before we dive into the topic, I would like to mention some logistical and technical information for our session. So first of all, the session will be recorded, which will be made available after the session. And so with your participation, you automatically grant the recording permission. If you don't want to be recorded, you would now unfortunately have to leave the session. In general, I would also ask you to please turn off your camera during the whole session and mute yourself whilst not speaking. If you have any questions, as I said, just please post it in the chat and we'll take them up later in the discussions. Thank you. So that's it also for the logistics. Now to begin with, I would like to give you first of all a short teaser for our upcoming session. Today we will shine a spotlight on an issue that most development partners, government representatives and utility managers are aware of, but yet rarely discuss openly. That is that worldwide, many public institutions do not pay their water and sewerage bills, thereby starving the utilities of the much needed resources to become or operate economically viable, which as a result undermines the fulfillment of the human rights to water and sanitation. Thus today, we want to discuss this issue together with you and provide you also with some success stories and hands-on solutions so that at the end of the session, we hope that you will be all inspired and leave the session ready to tackle back home. The challenge back home. And having said that, the agenda of today is as follows. We will start with the presentation of the main research findings and lessons learned of the government's Pay Your Water Bills policy brief, which is a joint product of the GIZ Water Policy Program and the Water Integrity Network, as well as end water poverty. Our speaker here will be Ms. Sara Ramos, who is a founding member of the independent organization Solutions for Water Integrity and Management, and at the same time is part of the research team that developed the background paper on the government's Pay Your Water Bills campaign. After Sarah's presentation, we will dive deeper into the topic and have 4 parallel interactive breakout sessions where you will have the opportunity to choose one group that you want to join. So in the first breakout group, we will have a best practice example from Romania. Here, Mr. Teodor Popa, the financial manager of the Brasov water company in Romania, will present you how Romania actually succeeded in getting governments to actually pay their water bills. In the second breakout group, Mrs. Bubala Muyove, the coordination of the Zambia NGO WASH Forum, will share with you the first insights of the government's Pay Your Water Bills campaign in Zambia. The third breakout group is led then by Mr. Jacques Ntsitonda, correct me if I'm spelling it wrongly, who is the Director of Water and Sanitation at the Rwanda Utilities Regulatory Authority. Mr. Jacques will share in his presentation the experiences from Rwanda and point out also some solutions on how regulators can successfully advocate to governmental institutions to timely pay their water bills. And last but not least, the fourth breakout group will be headed by who is an international coordinator working at the Global Civil Society Coalition and Water Poverty. In his presentation, Mr. Al-Hassan will stress the importance of the civil society to calling governments to pay their water bills. After having these 4 breakout group sessions, we will all return back to the panel and briefly present the results of the respective working groups. And last but not least, we will conclude the session by virtually cutting off the ribbon and officially launch the government's Pay Your Water Bills campaign. This will be done by my colleague Philip Beetlestone, who is a program manager at the Water Integrity Network in Berlin, and who will be also the moderator of today's session. So without further ado, I would like now to hand over to Sarah to present the main research findings of the policy brief. Sarah, the virtual stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so good afternoon to all. It's my pleasure to be here. My name is Sara Ramos and I am part of SWIM, the team that conducted a research and collection of evidence in order to have a closer look to the extension and complexity of the problem of non-payment of water bills by public institutions, because we know that this is an issue that is affecting numerous water utilities in many countries around the world. So let's start by highlighting why this issue is important. First of all, water utilities are crucial for guaranteeing the human right to safe water and sanitation. On the other hand, many public institutions are a high consumer of water, like educational institutions, military facilities, hospitals, and so on. But these utilities must have resources to cover operation costs, maintenance, and other investments. And therefore, a high collection rate is indispensable for them to cover these costs, to operate and to be economically viable. But the problem is that the financial stability of the utilities is threatened by public institutions that don't pay their water bills or pay them with delay, because actually this puts at risk the ability of the water utilities to operate efficiently, to maintain their infrastructure, but also to expand the distribution networks to vulnerable population that is still unserved. So what is the status of the problem at this moment? We found out that 95% of many water utilities in 18 countries that were investigated have cases of governmental non-payment, and this happens mostly in the global south. The finances of the water utilities are affected. One of the aspects is the total revenue of the utilities. We have some examples here. In Zambia, you can see that the amount owed by public institutions ascends to $28 million, and this represents 50.3% of the total revenue of the utility. In other cases in Botswana, the amount owed is similar with $29 million, which represents 19% of the total revenue. Another issue is the collection rate. This collection rate is considerably lower for public institutions than for private customers. For private ones, the average is around 92%, whereas for public institutions, it's only 48%. So which were the most important reasons given by the public institutions for non-payment? As you can see in this graph, they are diverse. One of the main reasons is the belief that because they are public institutions, they should not pay their water bills. Also, the lack of actions to enforce the payment and the inconvenience that the bills are based on estimated consumptions rather than accurate meter readings. Also, in some cases, the institutions don't have enough funds to pay their bills, as well as there are abuse of political power either in the water utilities or in the public institutions. So there's a set of recommendations that can be implemented to address this issue. But of course, they depend completely on the local conditions and the context and might be different for each utility. It is indispensable to have an adequate metering to get accurate water consumption and a solid billing system. It is also important to have a control in the budget cycle so that the institutions can allocate resources to pay their water bills in advance, with the support that water utilities could get to provide reliable information on the amount to be budgeted. Also, it is crucial to have an adequate corporate governance and regulation framework that involves transparency and accountability. Another alternative that can be very useful is to set political and financial conditions by donors and development finance institutions, as well as support programs to strengthen both civil society and water utilities. And of course, to raise awareness is an important issue, and this can be reached by combining efforts of officials, NGOs, utility managers, and the media about the importance of the governmental payment. So to wrap up this short presentation, I would like to highlight the key messages about the problem that we are talking about. First of all, access to water is a human right, and non-payment undermines it. Second, someone always pays the bill. It is necessary to have clear that the non-payment has a serious impact. This is not a victimless issue. This ends up affecting those who are actually paying their water bills because they received increased tariffs, so that the utilities increase their revenue and it balances the accounts, but also the communities in general that might be restricted of having water connections, or those who receive a poor service or not good quality water. So this is in turn at the end results in the deprivation of human right to water and sanitation. A third point is that it is necessary to define clear rules and to play by the rules. It is needed to have a clear definition of who should pay the water bills, who should not, and under which condition. If there is an institution that by law is exempt to pay, then the economic resources should come from other source, because in many cases, anyways, in any case, the water is treated, is distributed, but it's not paid for. And about the COVID-19 crisis, this pandemic has exacerbated the financial instability of water utilities. It is evident that the water bills the payments have been either decreased or delayed during this period. So this is an immediate call to action to definitely address this issue of governmental non-payment, because the lack of liquidity of the utilities doesn't allow them to have an adequate response to any kind of emergency, not only COVID-19 pandemic, but also droughts, floods, cholera cases, and so on. So the lack of access to water is a permanent crisis, not only during the COVID-19 pandemic, but in some cases is not treated as such. So the last point is that there are many ways to address this issue. There are different instruments and measures that can be implemented in areas like regulation and governance, actions in the utility operations, and as well as in community engagement and advocacy. But this is an issue of willingness, priorities, integrity, and long-term thinking. And holding back the money from water utilities might be more expensive in a long term. So this was all that I wanted to mention to you. Thank you for your attention. And now I give the word to Philip. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for that. I just hope you can see me. Right now, what we're planning to do is take a few minutes and go out into breakout sessions of 15 minutes that we'll invite you to in the chat. If you go into the chat, there will be the links to the breakout rooms. We're going to have 4 breakout rooms, as I said. We'll have the first one in the main session, and the second, third, and fourth breakout groups are now listed in the chat. If you click on the link, that will take you to the breakout room. And there, again, there'll be a short presentation and a moment for discussion. When you come back into the session, just hit on the main link and hit resume. Don't leave your session, because that will take you out of the call totally. So go to the main session and just hit resume, and that will bring you back in. Also, if you are having trouble with the links, we also have posted sorry, I just lost my train of thought. A Microsoft Word document that has those links. So without further ado, if you can go into the linkages and click which ones you want to go into, and then we can start the discussions there. Please return quickly. And also any questions you had, we'll hopefully put them into the chat so you can get them sort of sorted out by the moderator, and they can pose them to the speaker.
So in my breakout group, Mr. Fyodor Popa from the Romanian Brașov Water Company presented a successful example from Romania, where they managed to get governments to pay their water bills. First, Mr. Popa pointed out the source of the problems of non-payment of water bills by governmental institutions. And amongst those issues were some governance problems, such as the lack of regulations covering the governance of water utilities and the problem of legal enforcement of the payment. In addition, what I also find quite interesting, that the culture exists where governments were kind of asking themselves, why should they actually pay for water bills, since it's their water, you know, and they own the water company. Basically, that's it. So these were kind of the main problematic issues. And afterwards, Mr. Popa pointed out some solutions and measures that were taken to address non-payment. And I would like to highlight the most important measures that have been also partly discussed. So the first one is the establishment and legal strengthening of independent regulators who can enforce the payment of unpaid accounts. And also, besides that, in general, the legal situation has improved, so that water utilities have the legal right to disconnect the water supply if an account is not paid. And in addition, also the legal process to sue for that has been simplified. And further, the governmental institutions in Romania now have to make adequate provision, I think, in their annual budgets for the payment of the water services, and also must be able to show that the funds are used for that purpose. And one more point, that through some structural changes also in the water utility governance, the water utilities have gained also more independence from political interference, as they have also commercialized. I think these were the main measures that were taken. I think also there exists an exchange on best practices among the regional water companies in Romania, which is also quite great. And to sum it really up, overall, I think he said, yeah, it was kind of a lengthy process, the whole thing, but also a successful one in which Romania has been really able to address non-payment by government customers. And as a result, water companies exhibit a collection rate, correct me if I'm wrong, of over 99% within the last 10 years. So that's it, I think, from my session. I hope I didn't forget anything. I think you are on mute, Philip.
These will be collected and basically provided in the coming days. Civil society and campaign in Zambia. Can we hear back from you, please? Again, is the moderator from Group 2 back? Or you're on mute at this point in time?
I think it's Leonard, right?
Yes.
Leonard.
What we'll do then, I suppose, since with time, let's go to Group 3 and then come back to Group 2. And Group 3, what regulators can do, experience from Rwanda and ESAWAS. Could basically Group 3 come back and report back, please?
Yes, Philip, I think you are expecting Kasenga's voice, but it's me, Lotte, because Kasenga was unable to join the group link. So we had an interesting presentation from Jack Nzitonda from RURA in Zambia. And he mentioned different ways in how regulators can provide incentives for government institutions to pay their bills. For example, by advocating to government institutions and with Treasury to timely allocate line items for water and electricity, for example, bills in their annual budget. To regulators, in many cases, do an annual benchmarking report, and they can include an indicator on government debt in that report, so as to provide visibility to the issue. And they can also work with other government national bodies to report outstanding debt to utilities. And in the case of Rwanda, for example, they were able to address the issue where government has really become like a model for other consumers as well in terms of paying their bills. And one of the things they did is that the Auditor General actually raises queries if a government institution has arrears to the utility, so has outstanding debt to utility. And that has played an important role in the ability of utilities to, for example, take on commercial financing loans, which is now the case in Rwanda, that they are able to do this. And then we also had some experiences shared from Zambia, which underlined the complexity of the issue, that, for example, it turned out that the utilities themselves don't pay their electricity bills, which again points to the importance of engaging with the Ministry of Finance to find a comprehensive solution to the issue. And also some experiences shared from Malawi, where the Minister of Water has engaged on the same issue with the Ministry of Finance.
Great. Thank you very much, Lotte, on the feedback. We are running behind schedule right now with a little bit of time, but what we'll do is cut back on the closure notes a little bit, and then we'll have some more time. Group 4, supporting civil society space and voice through international advocacy. Could you feed back, Ivana, and keep it short if possible? Thank you. You're muted, please.
Hi.
Thank you.
We heard from Al-Hassan Adam from End Water Poverty how to push forward a campaign like this on paying bills with local partners, and the key things indeed would be putting the local partners up front in this campaign, and respect for the context and diversity of the members and partners, because not necessarily the speed is the important thing in this. It is a lengthy process in every locality has to be considered in their own context. Being very, very short.
Thank you very, very much for that in looking at time. The group 2, civil society and campaign Zambia. Could you feed back on that, please?
I think Leonard is not here, so I might spontaneously take over.
Thank you very much.
So in Group 2, we have discussed that there are several issues concerning non-payment by various government departments in Zambia. Furthermore, the weakness in corporate governance, as well as the failure to prepare financial statements, and are considered some reasons for non-payment in Zambia. The government has taken up some strategies to tackle the issue by the installation of prepaid meters, as well as payments made through the government treasury. So the next steps within the scope of the campaign for Zambia is going to be an awareness-raising campaign through the media, collaboration with commercial utilities and Navasco, and engaging the Ministry of Finance to apply pressure. That's all.
Great. Thank you very much for keeping it very short. We're running a few minutes behind, but let me just take the opportunity to wrap up a few of the points that we've heard, plus a few others. I think the key points are, one is the problem is very real. Again, and actually how do we address it? Secondly, it's these arrears from government institutions actually impact being able for utilities to be able to expand their networks to connect vulnerable populations. And at the end of the day, it's the government's responsibility on human right to water. Can they provide the services? And the bigger question comes is, can we achieve SDG 6 with these arrears remaining in place? My thought is maybe no. So bringing this to the challenge to all of us, how do we make a change? But the other point that's key is someone always pays. If it's not the government, it is the individual, the communities with higher tariffs or poorer service or slower service or even just lack of connection. The other one is to think, do we just run away from this problem? It seems too hard, it's government's involved again, or it's maybe the utilities don't have the resources. But at the end of the day, it is solvable. As we've heard from the breakout groups, it can be done. But there has to be a willingness and the priorities and sort of a long-term vision and an integrity within the organizations and the government to want to make the change. Because at the end of the day, as was pointed out with the Romanian case, it was a lot about behavior change and cultural change. And how do you actually do that? It's hard, it takes a long time, but at the end of the day, it can be done. And we shouldn't shy away from this because it is difficult in the short term. The other point that I think is critical with the COVID case, and it was put out by Sarah, was that in case of crises, be it droughts, be it floods, be it other epidemics, be it Ebola, be it cholera, again, this problem is very real for utilities. Their liquidity is at risk and they don't have the resources to adjust for these things. So we have to find ways to give this flexibility in. I think that's most of the things, but I think for me, this is also the opportunity just for a starting of a conversation. It's somewhere new, it's a challenge, but it can't be tackled by utilities alone. The governments have to be involved, the regulators have to be involved, communities have to be involved. But it comes down to good governance within a utility, within the government structures, and also for communities to actually raise their voice and sort of put back to the utilities or even the government on accountability and demand those services, which are basic human rights. But with that, as I said before, I'd like to sort of wrap up quickly here because we are behind, is with this presentation here today, basically win the end water poverty, and with the support of GIZ, we'd like to kick off and launch the Government Pay Your Water Bills campaign, which has just begun. We've done this research here. We'll be carrying it forward in 4 countries. But again, we just want to start this conversation and see, okay, where can we go with this? If you're interested in getting engaged with this, please join the conversation and join us in this sort of the beginnings, the first steps to this, but raising awareness on this issue is quite key. What I'll share with you now at this point is just the website that we have at this point, which is just the beginnings of the websites, and also we'll show you, we'll basically show you where you can go for resources. This is Water Integrity Network Government Pay Your Bills website. The connections or the linkages are in the chat. But I don't think we should shy away from it. Please, if you are interested in finding out more information, please join us either by our hashtag or through our websites. Feel free to post blogs or to question us here, or else engage anyone that you found on the presentations today. Please, we look forward to this journey and also to raise awareness on this actually very critical issue. And thank you very much to all the presenters and yourselves for being here today and engaging in this discussion. Sorry it was short and with a little technical difficulties, but with the COVID-19 times, we're finding new ways to communicate and work together. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate your time and look forward to see you on this campaign.
Thank you so much, Philip. Thank you to everybody for the live participation. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.